Aloha and good day. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz from eTurboNews, and this is a breaking news update. For more news updates and shows, please go to youtube.com/travel news group. youtube.com/travel news group. Here's our update.
Multilateral Leaders Taskforce on COVID-19, a crisis of vaccine inequity. The heads of the International Monetary Fund, World Bank Group, World Health Organization and World Trade Organization met with the leaders of the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust, AVAT, Africa CDC, Gavi and UNICEF. Multilateral group tackles obstacles to rapidly scale up vaccines in low and lower middle income countries. The majority of African countries cannot access sufficient vaccine to meet global goals of 10% coverage. The crisis of vaccine inequity is driving a dangerous divergence in COVID-19 survival rates and in the global economy. At its third meeting, the Multilateral Leaders Taskforce on COVID-19 (MLT), the heads of the International Monetary Fund, World Bank Group, World Health Organization and World Trade Organization, met with the leaders of the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust (AVAT), Africa CDC, Gavi and UNICEF to tackle obstacles to rapidly scale up vaccines in low and lower middle income countries, particularly in Africa, and issued the following statement. The global rollout of COVID-19 vaccines is progressing at two alarmingly different speeds. Less than 2% of adults are fully vaccinated in most low-income countries compared to almost 50% in high-income countries. These countries, the majority of which are in Africa, simply cannot access sufficient vaccine to meet even the global goals of 10% coverage in all countries by September and 40% by end 2021, let alone the African Union's goal of 70% in 2022. This crisis of vaccine inequity is driving a dangerous divergence in COVID-19 survival rates and in the global economy. We appreciate the important work of AVAT and COVAX to try and address this unacceptable situation. However, effectively tackling this acute vaccine supply shortage in low and lower middle income countries, and fully enabling AVAT and COVAX, requires the urgent cooperation of vaccine manufacturers, vaccine-producing countries, and countries that have already achieved high vaccination rates. To ensure all countries achieve the global goals of at least 10% coverage by September and 40% by end 2021. We call on countries that have contracted high volumes of vaccines to swap near-term delivery schedules with COVAX and AVAT. We call on vaccine manufacturers to immediately prioritize and fulfill their contracts to COVAX and AVAT, and to provide regular, clear supply forecasts. We urge G7 and all dose-sharing countries to fulfill their pledges urgently, with enhanced pipeline visibility, product shelf life and support for ancillary supplies, as barely 10% of nearly 900 million committed doses have so far been shipped. We call on all countries to eliminate export restrictions and any other trade barriers on COVID-19 vaccines and the inputs involved in their production. We are in parallel intensifying our work with COVAX and AVAT to tackle persistent vaccine delivery, manufacturing and trade issues, notably in Africa, and mobilize grants and concessional financing for these purposes. We will also explore financing mechanisms to cover future vaccine needs as requested by AVAT. We will advocate for better supply forecasts and investments to increase country preparedness and absorptive capacity. And we will continue to enhance our data, to identify gaps and improve transparency in the supply and use of all COVID-19 tools. The time for action is now. The course of the pandemic, and the health of the world, are at stake. Cuthbert Ncube, Chairman of the African Tourism Board. Cuthbert Ncube, Chairman of the African Tourism Board said, "We fully agree to call on all countries to eliminate export restrictions and any other trade barriers on COVID-19 vaccines and the inputs involved in their production. It is also important for tourism to be part of this discussion. Tourism is an essential industry for many African countries."
Thank you for listening to our news update. There's more on youtube.com/travel news group, or you can read us, of course, in going to our news portal at eTurboNews.com or travelnews.online.